Mediation is brought to you by Ayler Mediation and Legal Services, serving your mediation and legal service needs in Ontario, New York, and throughout North America. You can reach us at info@aylerservices.com or go to our website at aylerservices.com. That's EHLER services.com.
Hello, and welcome to Tough Call, a mediation podcast. My name is C.T. Ayler, and I am with the lovely, incandescent Dale Sheldon. You were waiting. See, you were tensed. So in some of our episodes, I've been referring to him as the Reverend Sheldon, and he was waiting.
Getting so triggered.
All right, so today we are talking about one of Mr. Dale Sheldon's favorite shows.
Yeah, I love the show.
Yeah, and he kept bringing it up to me and kept recommending, and finally I was like, okay, fine, we're going to watch it. And of course I loved it, and he wanted me to watch it with him. We watched only one episode, are you sure?
Maybe two. Mm-hmm. It wasn't much.
I know, and then I had to binge the rest. And I really tried to hold off on season 2 for a long time.
And actually,
I did.
If I remember correctly, I think you watched all of the first season, binged it, and then we went to watch the second season, and I was like, well, let's, just to get ourselves into the second season, let's rewatch just the last episode of the first season, and I don't think we got much further.
No, I had to watch it all.
Yeah.
So I think it's binge worthy. So some of you out there, we were just talking about this now, about how it's apparently a very polarizing show based off a very
Have we said the name of it yet?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. I'm just
Are you doing that on purpose?
I'm building anticipation.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And you
Go ahead.
just ruined it, Dale.
Totally messed up the flow.
Just tell me the name of the show. I've just learned it's fairly polarizing, and I never thought it is. And it does it to me because it's so lovely and calm and very relaxing in many ways. Like there's nothing.
I will have it on in the background just because it's but even the intense scenes really aren't.
It's not
so
Jack
brief.
Reacher like we were just watching a scene from that. There's no intensity like that at all. So this is based off a graphic novel. Ooh, I remembered to say it right this time. And it was developed into a Netflix series that is wildly popular called Heartstopper.
Yes, Heartstopper.
And I am the mediator. This is my role today as usual. But Dale is now the authority for the show on Heartstopper. So we're going to sort of play it a little bit back and forth where I get, he's going to answer in Heartstopper fan world, and I'm going to maybe even ask questions. How about that? We try.
Sure,
we'll try. We'll see how far we get.
Yeah. Well, and you found this brilliant thing.
Yes. And I think the reason why... I think there's probably a lot more reasons than picking just one. Learning that the graphic novel is being banned in Oregon and Florida, and I know that things like this some are being banned in Canada. Just learning that, I thought, really? This one?
Of all the shows to be banned, I really don't understand that. I mean, the entire show is teaching how to consent, how to communicate, how to navigate conflict. Yeah.
In such a great way. And it's in a school environment, which is sort of the last bastion of forced socialization, because as adults, post-secondary and secondary school environments, it's all consuming. There's so much going on. Yes, you're studying. Yes, you get a break, but you still have to take your work home. You still have to do research. You still have to go to the library. There's a lot that's still expected of you. And if you're in a good school that has extracurricular activities, your social circle ends up being school as well.
Mm-hmm.
So as adults, we don't have to have our coworkers as our best friends, you know, and also family members aren't necessarily showing up at our workplaces, whereas there's a lot of siblings who are going to the same school together. And so navigating some of those things, student to student, student to teacher, student to parent, parent to teacher, teacher to teacher. There's a lot. There's a lot. There's a whole Venn diagram that we could draw of issues. And, you know, there's a lot of things that happen in schools these days, which is sort of sprouted movements to homeschool more and pulling kids out of school. And we have a risk right now, I think, and there's some contention. But I understand the reality of when school shootings and school violence, it's a big thing. And people say, oh, well, it only happens in the States. That's not true. I was in Toronto in the 90s. My grade 9 year, there was a murder in my school committed by students to a student. We went to an alternative high school, so there was only 120 of us. And navigating conflicts, navigating issues, you know, thankfully Heartstopper does not, I mean, season 3 is coming out this year. I don't know if they're going to tackle a murder in their school. I don't think so.
I'm sure they don't.
I don't think so. But there are still really difficult issues that they bring up. And I think it's important that we use such a lovely series to explore some of these very complex problems that can be very harmful to children or youth. And I wish back then in the 90s that there was more peer-to-peer mediation and tools of mediators. They brought in a therapist when it happened. And years ago, I was asked to be screened for human trafficking, helping with prevention plans and joining certain task forces and whatnot. And they asked me a lot of questions as part of their screening, as how does some of your past trauma inform your current situation? How do you navigate conflicts? How has it informed your past? Of course, what happened in my school was one of the first things that I thought of, because it was very informative. And I reached out to some people I went to high school with at the time, and I asked them some of the questions. And only a few replied, and many of them said, well, I wasn't involved in it, so it didn't happen to me. And I thought it was a very curious response.
Yeah.
Because, okay, you weren't directly involved in the plotting of a murder of someone that we knew, that we went to school with. And you weren't directly involved in being the victim of it either. But we are all part of an organism that is a group social structure when we go to a secondary institution or primary or even post-secondary. Like, it doesn't, that school academic life, you're very much involved in each other's lives, no matter how peripherally or insignificant you think it is.
Yeah.
You never know the impact you're having on somebody. And so in preparation for this episode, I was thinking about some of these resources that have been developed, that have been brought forward to help children and youth navigate some of these very horrible, like school shootings or crime that happens, but also even bullying or issues where consent, there are still issues with regards to sex and identity and how things are impacting kids today. And there's a lot of polarization we seem to be entering an age where people are wanting to have conflict more than they want to have peace. And so I've found this resource, and it's free. I'll put it in the show notes. It was written by Maureen Block and Barbara Blazich, and it's Resolving Conflict with a Peer Mediation Program. It's actually a manual for primary ages and intermediate from grades 4 to 8. So it encourages children to start cultivating the tools that I think help them once they go into high school. Yeah. And I was curious if the author, Alice, I can't remember her last name. Alice Oseman, if she might have had some training in mediation. Did she?
No, not at all. No. So she wrote her first book at 19 in 2014. And that she got a BA in English literature in 2016. And that first book was the first in the Heartstopper universe, I guess you would say, because there's several books and now the TV series. And they're even talking, well, I don't know, I think the fans are talking about possibly a movie in the future.
That would be great.
Yeah. Like Nick and Charlie later on in life.
So she was very young when she started this.
Very, very young, yeah. So she just seems to just have a really high EQ, right. I guess.
Emotional intelligence, for those who don't know. But yes, that's fantastic. And so even the people who produced this guide, they said, we hope you find this handbook useful and would appreciate your feedback. So we're giving some feedback on this as saying A++, super excellent. And we're going to use on page 5, there is a goals and objectives of mediation. So it really starts this manual from a place of why mediation is important as a tool to give individuals. Yeah. Not necessarily certified, trained mediators, but just anyone who might be encountering a conflict and starting these peacemaking options and opportunities at a young age. So I'm going to read the goals here, but then we're going to go into some of the peer mediation bonuses, and Dale's going to connect us
to Heartstopper. How they relate to Heartstopper, like scenes that demonstrate how this can work. Yeah.
So the goal of peer mediation is to help a school become more healthy, positive, and safe learning environment by empowering students to manage conflict, transform relationships, and enhance the school climate. Program objectives can include reducing rates of office referrals, suspensions, and expulsions, creating a stronger sense of community by bridging differences, and instilling valuable lifelong skills that prepare students to become more productive citizens. Love it.
Yeah,
you're totally here for it. So one of the first things they say, specifically peer mediation, empowers students with the skills and strategies for dealing with conflict. So why would we recommend someone watch Heartstopper? To get an idea of how students can develop skills and strategies to deal with conflict.
Yeah, I mean, first, I thought we'd just really, really quick explain what, for those who haven't seen Heartstopper or even heard of it, what's happening. I know, how can
they
you know?
Haven't even just go watch it and then come back.
It really is a good show. It's very wholesome. But what is happening is, prior to the show beginning, there's a boy named Charlie Spring. And he has been outed at school. He's gay. And the previous year, he'd been very, very heavily bullied. And now at the beginning of this new year, he's finally kind of coming into himself a little bit.
And there's a bit more of normalcy. However, we see it even early in the beginning of him hiding out in the art room.
Yeah. He hides out in the art room. He has a brief relationship with someone who does not treat him well at all. And the whole show is basically him coming out of that and finding what a real relationship should be like, a real loving relationship. But you're right, exactly. Even in the beginning, we see him in the art class of Mr. Ajayi. And there are scenes that are, again, brilliantly written, where Mr. Ajayi is helping him basically with the critical thinking skills that he needs to make his own decisions and find his own way. And Charlie keeps coming back to him and asking questions. And he's like, look, Charlie, I can't I can't solve your problems for you. Like, I'm here to try. But, let's think about these questions. I think that's a brilliant
It's
point.
Very subtle, so
yeah,
you
it
can
is. It
miss
really
it.
is. It very is.
But I think the brilliance of the show is that you watch them navigate problems and conflict in a way that almost seems very calm, because conflict doesn't have to be it doesn't have to turn into a Jerry Springer show.
Yeah.
For those of you who are younger who are like, who's Jerry Springer? There was a time when Jerry Springer was very, very popular.
Yeah. Feel blessed if you don't know.
Yeah. And it was just all about engaging. And in sports, we happen to love and cheer on people who are in, mixed martial arts or whatnot, who are just there for the fight, or watching people in hockey. I seem to see it more often because I'm Canadian and everyone loves hockey except for me, maybe. I'm from Toronto, so I support the Leafs. I've said this before, but I'm not a huge hockey fan.
Team? Is there a team?
Yeah, the
called
Toronto Maple Leafs.
Oh,
yeah, and
that's
blue
so
and white
fierce.
uniform. Oh yeah, they are fierce.
Maple Leaf.
They're
Okay,
tough.
Sorry.
Leafs, go Leafs!
Yeah.
But
Get the sap out of the tree.
but you see quite often roughhousing and people just loving the blood sport of it.
Yeah, it's supposed to be really. I've never seen a hockey game.
You've never seen
life.
a hockey game, not
Ever.
once.
I'm California. We don't have hockey in
Yes,
California.
you do. You have the LA Kings. Wayne Gretzky went there.
Oh well, I've never been there. Never been there.
Okay, got it.
But I've heard it's violent, right? I always,
it can be very violent and unnecessarily so.
Like people losing teeth and getting cauliflower ears and stuff like that.
Especially at the professional, the
professional
NFL
level.
kind of level. No, NHL, whoops. The NHL level. As opposed to Olympics. I remember one person telling me he was a huge hockey fan going, the Olympic hockey is boring. And I said, are you kidding? It's more about the sportsman
instead of just beating each other up. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that's what makes it so good. And I think the thing is I really enjoy and appreciate this series, this graphic novel turned into a series of showing you that conflict happens no matter what, but there are ways to deal with it in a calmer, maybe more mature, maybe more emotionally intelligent way. But there's still some fighting, just for those people like, oh, well, I'm only there for the fight. Well, there are some conflict. There is some punching.
Well, and rugby is a big part of this show. It's incredibly
brutal.
violent. Charlie gets knocked out.
Nick recommends it to Tao, right?
Yeah,
as a way
it's a great way to get aggression out. It's like, what? No.
Tao is not appreciative of that, though.
No, Tao can't even run. He can't do anything. Well, anyway, he can't do anything sporting. Yeah. But there is also, because this was, empowerment and students gaining skills and strategies, right? There was another example that I thought was pretty good regarding like personal accountability and holding your friends accountable as well. So like once you've come to some sort of agreement, it's so easy to fall out of it. And there is a bit
practice.
It's a skill. It's a practice that you have to work on.
Not going to be perfect at it all the time either.
Yeah, no matter how well intentioned you are. And in season 2, there's a bit where, because Nick is 1 year older than Charlie.
Yes.
And Charlie's sister Tori is the same age as Nick, so they're in the same grade, and Charlie's 1 year younger. And they go to this big, like bonfire party for the end of the year. So in England, everything's a little bit different. So their 9th and 10th grade is kind of like the end of what they would, our 9th and 10th grade is kind of what the end of what they would call their high school years. And then they go to college, or what they might also call sixth form.
The A levels, the sixth form, the A levels, the O levels. Yeah.
But it's their 10th, it's their 11th and 12th grade years. So Nick and Tori are moving from 10th to 11th grade. So they're going into sixth form. And it's a big celebration. They finished their GCSEs, which is like their big end of year exam. And they go to this big bonfire party. And because Charlie's younger, Tori makes Nick promise that he will watch after Charlie, because she is extremely protective of him. And he immediately loses him. And he cannot find him. And it's gotten dark now, and it's kind of a crazy party. People are raging, and Nick is going from tent to tent looking for Charlie, and instead runs upon Tori. And Tori's like, "You're not very good at keeping your promises, are you?" Really puts him in check. And I think that it's subtle again, but it's another one of those things, holding accountability. And he says, I'm sorry, I'm going to find him, I promise. And he does. But it's another one of those skills. Keeping yourself accountable.
I think there's so many opportunities where there's been these little areas, because even Nick tries to hold Harry accountable for his bullying actions.
Yeah.
Right? He
absolutely.
comes to me, he's like, it's so easy when it's your friend group to try to, it's almost a question of loyalty, of, am I being disloyal if I call them out or try to hold them accountable? So it really is quite a brave thing to break out of that social, I don't want to call it a clique or clique necessarily, but you are risking that fear of ostracism. Yeah. It's very powerful.
Extremely.
It makes people do all sorts of horrible things.
Or at least go along with them without questioning properly.
And how often I've seen adults... Actually, really quick aside about this is many, many years ago, I was working in bank web support and whatnot. And there was this one woman who I was working with. We were getting along, and we happened to bring up high school bullying. And I mentioned that I wasn't bullied in high school, but I was bullied in middle school quite a bit. And she goes, I was a terrible bully. And I was just waiting for her to continue. And it's unfair for me to say that she wasn't the brightest bulb, but she, beautiful
The
woman.
box was missing a crayon.
I had a huge crush on her just because of her physical, like it almost hurt to look at her. That's how beautiful it was. And I think when people are gifted with that, as a result, it sort of makes them a little bit flat personality wise. I find it's very rare to meet someone who they're so gorgeous it almost hurts to look at them, and then they have a brilliant personality. You almost want to say, you should die.
Yeah. I think the Hemsworth brothers, maybe, if they're the only ones that have achieved that. It's like, you're too perfect.
It's just, no. And intelligent, too.
Like Melissa McCarthy, she's like, shut up. You need something wrong with you. You can't.
And I think the thing is, there she is standing there and realizing what she's saying for a moment. And then she lets herself out of it. She goes, well, there were worse bullies than me. And it's like, I didn't really do much for it. But, it wasn't really like it was my fault. And that's the thing that I think Nick really shows of how to exemplify standing up against someone who is even your own peer, who's a shameful display of what it means to hurt somebody and harm somebody. And he's going, no, this is unacceptable. Not that Harry listens to him.
No.
Not for quite some time.
It takes a lot to drill down into Harry. And he does start to finally listen, but it takes such a long time. And I don't think he ever quite gets there.
No.
But Yeah.
And it takes some of the other peers on the rugby team to stop just being the peanut gallery and just allowing this to happen.
Yeah.
Because, Nick's standing alone against Harry. That's hard. That's a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah. And funny enough, it was actually the final catalyst for Harry to finally change was someone who wasn't in his peer group at all. It was Isaac, who we kind of get the idea that maybe they had been friends in like as much smaller children, because they're so familiar with each other. And there's a scene in Paris where they have to complete a French lesson together. They were partnered together. And Isaac is very brave and open, which is very out of step for Isaac. And he says, Harry, don't you even think about what you're saying to people? Do you not care about anyone's feelings at all? And of anyone, Isaac was the most direct.
Yes.
Other than Nick, he was the most direct with Harry.
But in a very calm way, because Nick and Harry end up coming to blows. And Isaac does not. And I would have to reevaluate that scene, because I see Isaac as someone who is not necessarily, not a coward, but I don't even necessarily see him as brave. I see him as someone who seems very calm and almost easy, very unruffled.
Very much. It's very difficult to ruffle Isaac. So when he does get ruffled, you pay attention. Yeah. Which is what maybe that is what also helped Harry to snap. Yes. Because it's literally like an hour later that for the very first time, Harry actually sticks up for Nick and Charlie at the top of the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah. And that's I loved that scene. I thought that was such a good, it was so well directed too. I can geek out on the angles and the editing and all that, but I just thought it was such a good moment to show character growth.
Yes, it was beautifully done. Yeah.
All right.
I just love also how Nick kind of it's also, earlier today, you and I were talking about how to handle bullies, and we were watching some videos that gave
my God, it was terrible
examples, which is why she mentioned Jack Reacher a minute ago. Yes. Really terrible examples.
That actually wasn't too bad, that number one with Jack Reacher, considering the other ones
as it got worse. Yeah. Oh, geez.
Horrible lines, too.
But
just terrible
how
lines.
Nick dealt with it in that scene was perfect. Where they were just he and Charlie were taking a selfie. No one knows they're a couple. And this homophobic kid in Harry's group calls out to him and says, are you, by the way, Charlie has a hickey. No one knows why he has a hickey. We know why he has a hickey. He goes, was it you, Nick? Were you the one who did it? As a joke, but it's a bullying joke. And Nick says, what if it was? Are you jealous? And that again, as a banter joke, but it was a great diffusing of the situation.
Yes.
Yeah. And then Harry said, hey, let's leave him alone. That was the first time he actually stood up for them. Beautifully done.
Lovely. Okay. So did you have any other things? Or
No, I think,
okay. So point 2, specific peer mediation develops communication and decision-making tools that influence choices in the future and increase leadership potential.
I missed the leadership potential when I was reading this. I was so focused on the communication part. I was thinking this kind of related to how this entire show is like a masterclass on consent with the communication. And that doesn't really go into the leadership portion too. But
choices in the future.
But choices in the future. And I can think of an example for leadership too. But really, if you want to understand consent, or you're trying to explain how consent works to a middle school or high school kid.
Or grades 4 to 8, as they're recommending in this handbook.
This show is perfect for that. I think it's also important to remember that consent is not necessarily even sexual. Like we tend to think of it in reference to sexual assault, and and it's not. It's you can teach it to little kids, just sharing toys. Right? I mean, it's kind of the same thing.
Doesn't always work out that well with toddlers.
It doesn't, because they don't have, their brain isn't fully developed for all of that yet, perhaps. Oh,
okay.
I don't
Story
know.
time, Dale.
Okay.
When I was in high school as an ECE assistant, there was
what's an ECE?
Early childhood educator, so daycare. Okay. There was this very big learning tool that we were all supposed to adopt, that if a child hurt another child, we had to point it out. And it was sort of stepping up and being decision-making tools, but it had an unintended consequences that I learned very much this day. So this way of resolving children who are fighting or having conflict and doing something that's hurtful, you walk up and say, "Oh, are you okay? Wow, are you hurt? Hey, you hurt my friend. Please don't hurt my friend. I really didn't like how you hurt my friend." So
communication.
So 2 children, I will call them Javon and Tina, okay? So Javon and Tina are fighting, and Tina is a very strong young girl, very confident. And Javon was pretty confident too. Like they're very memorable children.
Strong little personalities.
Yes, so strong. I have so many memories of them in this year. So Javon ends up hurting Tina, and she cried a bit, which was very unusual for her because she wasn't a crier. So I immediately go down. I was like, "Oh, are you okay? Javon, you hurt my friend Tina. Like, why did you do that?" And he just looks and he goes, "She's not my friend." It's like, oh.
Wow.
You're right about that.
So we need to work on empathy, apparently.
So it's like, what, as teachers, as educators, how do you cultivate? And I think the teaching staff do some pretty good ones. I'm hoping you have a couple of pointers on some of the teachers
for teaching.
Just some of the consequences. Like you already brought up the art teacher.
Yeah. He was probably the strongest of all of them. Some of the teachers are absolutely terrible. Like I can't remember his the one name, but the teacher of
the homeroom.
Yeah, but it's at the house, Hamlet House.
Yeah,
they don't use homeroom anyway. Yeah. But on Charlie's very first day. Now we know that the context of this, that he was bullied heavily that whole previous year, and primarily by the rugby team students, right, of the upper class. And this teacher says, "Oh yeah, you're sitting over there next to Nick Nelson. Oh yeah, he's a year older than you, and he's on the rugby team. So I hope you get together, but I hope you get along. But if you don't, it's not my problem."
Yeah, he actually said it's not my problem. And he was so casual, like almost caustic about it too.
He was almost glad.
Yes.
To be putting Charlie in this potentially bad situation. Thankfully, it was the opposite.
Yes.
And
it's so funny. Here we are touting this as a beautiful example, but this is definitely one example where it was not okay for an educator. It's almost the antithesis of what we're saying.
But the antithesis is important to recognize, to see, how not to do something.
How not to behave.
Yeah.
But we have Coach Singh.
Coach Singh is fantastic. Yeah.
Really good at supporting the boys, getting them to understand their choices in the future as well. Like, Charlie comes to her and says, "I want to quit rugby."
Yes.
And she's like, "Have these boys said anything to you? Do I need to talk to anyone?" He's like, no. And she still empowers him. So she doesn't stomp all over him, drag him in, embarrass him, say, "Okay, who's giving Charlie a hard time?" She's like, "Okay, but let me know, and we could still really use you, but it's your choice.
Exactly. Yeah. And then she does a similar thing with Nick later after she catches Nick and Charlie making out in the supply room, and afterwards just approaches Nick and she has noticed there's an issue amongst the rugby team, that now Charlie is also part of the rugby team at this point, and asks, well, is this part of the reason? He said, well, yeah, it might be. But the other lads, they don't actually know that we're together. He said, well, that's no one's business. That's up to you to decide. But I'm here. I know what this is like. And again, empowers him just like she did Charlie.
Yeah. Yeah. And also when it comes to increasing leadership potential, I think it's difficult to define in this because there wasn't any hierarchy, which is great. It's not, okay, we've elected a leader of our friend group and that person's going to... You could almost say that Harry was that in the rugby team. That's why they all sort of followed him a little bit.
Yeah. Well,
possibly.
I mean, Nick is like the captain of the rugby team. So Nick is actually their
the
leader of
the appointed
team.
Leader, yes.
But you're right. But socially, Harry has kind of placed himself as the leader of the team.
Yeah. But I think... leadership doesn't have to be about being an authority person. I think in many ways, this is a great show to show that people can cooperate. People can have a leadership opportunity in supportive structures and to help. Because Tao in many ways is a leader in some ways. And here's how I'll argue that is he's so distraught about keeping his friendship group together that he acts out, and it's Elle and Nick and even Charlie who are slowly having these conversations with him that will help sort of bring him down from the rafters and calm him. And he provides opportunities for social glue. And that is a leadership. Let's get together. Let's come at this time and watch movies. Let's go and hang out at these things.
Oh, absolutely.
He is someone who is a connector, and connectors are leaders in many ways. And so there's that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, I can't think of anyone else who has natural leadership ability within the friend group themselves.
I think they all take little... I think Tao does it the best. But it's Elle that suggested they all go to Charlie's first game.
Yes.
Charlie's has his birthday, and he asks the others, do you mind if I bring Nick?
Yes.
So they all do it a little bit here and there. But you're right. Tao definitely is the primary one because he's setting up these regular movie nights amongst his friend group.
Yes. Well, and as I said, exactly. You don't have to have one person who's always in the driver's seat making the decisions. Good social health and congruity happens when everyone has an opportunity to hold each other accountable.
Yeah.
And I think that satisfies an objective of peer-to-peer mediation, is that we're not appointing one person to be the peer to go around mediating conflicts. That defeats the whole purpose of having students learn how to support one another. Was there any other scene for this one, or should we go to the next point?
I mean, should we say anything more about the consent part, actually?
Tell me
some
everything.
Examples of it? Because there are a few really good examples. There's the antithesis example at the beginning, in the very first episode, where Ben actually assaults Charlie. It's not... Because again, this whole show is very much muted. It's very wholesome.
That's a good word. Muted.
Yeah.
It happens, but we're not going into...
It is an assault, but
misery porn.
It's not actually... it's not really sexual because they're not at that stage in their lives yet. But he does kiss him forcibly against his will. And it is violent enough. It's violent in a way.
It's very violent because Charlie was...
emotionally extremely violent.
Well, and that push.
And pushing him against the wall.
And we have all of those examples, just to play devil's advocate for Ben's character in the moment, is he's been fed that socially cultural like way of, if you're feeling impassioned and dramatic. Jayla, my dog, is dreaming right now. She's chasing squirrels in her.
I was wondering what that sound was.
Yeah.
It's like a motorcycle outside? No, it's just Jayla.
Get up that tree, stay up there. So for Ben, it's, we have so many scenes in movies and television and various media, even in music too, of like, I'm so impassioned, I just have to grab you and I have to kiss you. So he's trying to convince Charlie, who's telling him no, and even turning away from him, and has told him in multiple instances, like, we're done. This is not working. And you had mentioned when we were talking before, is that he'd given... You actually remember all of the reasons that he's explained.
He gave bullet point reasons just before that to Ben of why I do not want to be with you. And he ignored all of it. He just seems to ignore all of it. But yeah, you're right. A lot of people have this idea that almost forceful kind of can be romantic. And some people think that's the only way to be romantic, because through the 40s and 50s and 60s, there's so many movies where, the man just goes in and goes for the kiss. The famous photo on was that VE Day or whatever, of the sailor
and the nurse or something
in Manhattan when the war ends,
and everyone thinks it's the height of romance.
But going back, she was incredibly, they interviewed her later, years later, she was incredibly frightened. She had no idea who that man was. That was assault, that picture,
and we have glorified,
and we've romanticized it. And that should not be how it is. And consent can actually be incredibly romantic. And later in, I don't know what episode it is, in season 1, they do a brilliant showing of that in Heartstopper, where at Harry's birthday party, Charlie's still trying to figure Nick out. Like he's all just swooning over Nick. But he gets this sense, even though Nick has kind of hinted that he's straight and has definitely never said that he's gay or bi or anything, he still has been getting this sense that Nick's been very flirty with him. So he's starting to wonder. And they finally get a time alone. And there had been a rumor that Nick was had a crush on this girl from the girls' school, and he asks him flat out, so is the rumor true? No, it's absolutely not. It's not true. It's not true at all. And wow, okay, so you don't have a crush on anyone? Well, I didn't say that. So maybe and now he's starting to wonder. But I don't think he even wonders yet, because then he asks,
which girl is it, or something?
Well, so what's she like?
Yeah.
And he says, you're just gonna automatically assume it's a she. And that's when Charlie, you can see his heart drop.
Like, oh, what?
Yeah, he's like, wait, could there really be? Could my suspicions actually be true? And Charlie shows so much bravery, because it's you have to be so brave to do this, to put yourself out there.
We've all been there, but especially in the queer community, because you just don't know. And having gotten mixed messages in the past, I don't know if you can speak to it, but it's if you want to speak to it. But for me, I know there's been a couple of times where I totally thought I could make a move. And so I wasn't forceful. I didn't push anyone up against a wall, but I was just like, I'm really interested in you. It takes a lot. Like it's so much. Oh, it's so hard.
Yeah.
And CT, you're so funny. You're so funny. I'm like, no. I'm trying to be really serious here. Please stop pushing this off. And then of course you eventually get the message. They're trying to gently, subtly trying to let you down, and it's
and that's when you're
mortifying.
Lucky. Among men, that can be incredibly violent.
Yes.
People have actually been
murdered,
killed just for revealing that they might be interested. Yeah. And here in this case, they're finally in this moment, and Charlie's realizing maybe there's something more. And so he does this brilliant thing where he doesn't ask, like, are you gay? He's kind of saying, well, are you maybe not straight? Are you maybe not completely, he doesn't say, would you be willing, would you kiss a boy? He says, would you kiss someone who wasn't a girl? Mm-hmm. And I think that's just a brilliant way to come at it. So Alice, very well done, I think. Mm-hmm. But that's the consent. It's like he's mm-hmm. actually asking, would you consider going out with someone who wasn't a girl? Would you consider kissing someone who wasn't a girl? Yeah. Would you kiss me?
Yeah.
And he says yes.
Slow, careful, kind.
Yes. Yeah. And Nick slowly coming out of his shell, very kind of reluctantly.
Terrified.
Oh, he is so terrified. You can see the deer in the headlights in his eyes, but he wants it too.
It's so funny. My realization that I was queer was I was 16 years old, and I suddenly realized that I had almost an obsession on Michelle Osterloo. So if she's ever out there and she ever listens to it, this is my big confession now. I just remember staring at her lips day in, day out, every time I was around her, getting that goofy, like, oh gosh, and just wanting to kiss her so bad. Just being like, what would it be like to kiss her? It must be so great. Like that's, and then watching Chasing Amy.
Oh,
and
yeah, I remember that
was
movie.
My, oh my gosh, it's true. I wasn't given a road mat. This is really weird.
Yeah.
So thank you, Kevin, for writing that script. Yes. So.
And then there was one last really amazing example of consent in the show. It's in season 2. Charlie and Nick are already together. They're in Paris. Mm-hmm. They're in, they're technically in bed, but they're nowhere near. They have not consummated their relationship. They're nowhere near ready for that. They're still kids.
As if consummation has to mean something either, too. Like you can be, because we bring up asexuality,
That's true.
Too.
You're absolutely right.
Isaac.
I was just trying to be a little bit more discreet, and I didn't think of a better word. But no, you're absolutely right. That doesn't mean anything. Their relationship is very much real, even though they haven't gone there yet.
They're just getting to the sexual aspect.
Yeah, and just barely. Yeah. Like like I said, it's such a wholesome show. They haven't, and not that sex is not wholesome. It can be very much so. But anyway, overcorrecting a little bit. But anyway, they're in bed. Charlie's actually on top of Nick. So this is the most sexual they've ever gotten.
Yes.
And they're kind of making out a little bit. And Nick tenses up. And Charlie can sense that in him. He can feel it. And he stops immediately and asks, like, is this okay? And Nick is kind of hesitant. And he says, yeah. It's like, that didn't sound very sure.
Yeah.
And then he revealed, well, I like it. I really do. It's just, I'm just not ready to do that yet.
Yeah.
And Charlie's like, oh, no, neither am I. I didn't want you to think that's where this was heading. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a brilliant example of not just consent, but enthusiastic consent. It can't just be that someone is kind of going along with the motions. They need to actually be vested in it as well. Because if they're not, they're going to regret it later. Mm-hmm. And that was a beautiful example of that as well.
We've all been on bad dates where we've maybe gone a little too far. And yes, especially for female presenting individuals, we've lived in cultures that are still going on today where it's definitely about shaming the woman for any type of sexual encounter that, well, she should have known better. She should have respect. She should have played the good girl. She needed to just keep her legs closed.
Well, at the same time, there's this expectation of not disappointing your partner, which is an exact contradiction to that.
Yep. Be available. And if you're not, you're frigid.
Yeah. And I feel like that's what Nick was feeling in that moment. He didn't want to disappoint Charlie, but he had to be honest. But he could only do that when Charlie actually recognized it and asked him directly.
And they navigated it quite well.
Oh, yeah. Beautifully well. Yeah.
And I think it's good to have those scenes that help, especially young people, know that, you know, you might be very interested in exploring these things, but maybe hold off a little bit. Take your time. You don't have to rush into this. You don't have to be sexually active at a very, very young age.
Yeah, slow down. It's okay. It's okay. It's no reason, no rush. Yeah, I hate seeing these shows where like the kids are. Funny enough, I remember it mostly from British shows where the kids are the exact same age as Nick. They're finished their GCSEs.
Oh, you're talking about Sex Education? I love that show, though.
There's an older show that I can't remember the name of off the top of my head. But almost the entire premise of the show was these kids have finished their GCSEs. They're going into sixth form. Some of them are maybe going off into a college for lack of, you know. And their whole goal is to not leave school a virgin. Which we see that in American shows as well, but in
American Pie.
But they're 2 years older.
Yes.
There's this misconception, I feel like culturally between the two, where British kids see our American shows and see them leaving high school and comparing them at the same age. They're not. They're 2 years older. We see it two different things. What you should be seeing if you're in Britain and looking at that, it's not the end of your GCSEs. It's the end of college going to uni. That is the end of high school going to college.
But also, Dale, understand that there is even younger, like sexting at 9 years old and 10 years old. It's very scary to realize as a parent. Yeah. And as someone who's sex positive, but I want my very young child to know what it is, but I want him to understand consent. That's my main goal, is like, as you start getting curious about this, as you start getting interested in this, you need to understand the other person who might be the object of your affection might not be that into it. And that sucks. It's a terrible, it's a mortifying feeling sometimes, but you have to walk away.
You have to. Yeah.
And I love how Heartstopper, they're, what am I, from Boston or something?
Heartstopper.
How it helps navigate that very intense conflict at that with the hormones.
Yeah.
Oh, the hormones bathing the brain 24/7. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other ones before we move to the next point?
No, I think that's it for that one.
Okay. So help students gain perspective and understanding of themselves, others, and their issues with peer mediation.
This was kind of a hard one too. I was thinking, one thing that came to mind, because it's about self-perspective, right? And understanding yourself. There's a beautiful moment in season 2 when they're at the Louvre. And I think Elle and Nick are both kind of looking up at this small painting up on the ceiling. And Elle asks Nick, you know, like, what are you looking at? He's like, well, I'm just looking at this painting. It's like, well, what about it? I don't know. I just like it. I just know I like it. And she says, well, yeah, you know, that's okay. You know, you don't really need to understand the art. You know, just appreciate it. And I think his emotional intelligence is so high that he then equated that to romanticism in himself. And he said, yeah, you know, I guess that's true about life as well. What do you mean? Well, you know, you don't always have to have everything figured out. You can just feel.
Oh, yes. That's such a brilliant line. That is by far, hands down, one of the best lines.
One of the best lines of the show, because that also makes Elle in that moment realize she's been way overthinking her relationship with Tao. She's been
just a bit.
Yeah.
But for a very good reason, because season 1, that milkshake interaction when Darcy and Tara are trying to force them together by them being on a triple date, and she realizes, she goes, whoa, I've gone through a lot already. Yeah. I don't necessarily want things to change, but you already see her getting the hearts, and when Tao shares the
she's totally
she's like,
she's admitted she has a crush on Tao.
Oof.
But she's sure he doesn't have a crush back because he is oblivious.
I think he's a little bit more oblivious towards the romantic feelings even within himself, because I think he has very strong emotions for Elle, but he sort of mixed it with friend, and that's hard when, you know, as someone who is queer and you know, but also very monogamous. I'm a very monogamous person. I think the biggest problem is there's this expectation when you can kind of go all ways that suddenly you're up for absolutely everything. But it's because I know, this is how I identify with Tao so much, is that I really love and enjoy people, and I love and enjoy, I'm very loyal to my friends and loyal to friendships, and I enjoy people. So it can get very confusing about how that sorts itself out romantically.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, how do I know if I even romantically love this person when I have such powerful friendship emotions too? And they don't necessarily have to mix.
No, they don't.
I think that's definitely the challenge that Tao and Elle face, because I think either way, I'm glad they're together at the end of season 2. I'm really glad.
Like, we're all rooting for them, really.
Yeah. But at the same time, I think it could have easily been like, we have strong feelings, we try it out, and we realize we're better as friends, and we don't need to go down that path. And we're not necessarily looking for anybody else, but we're not rushing into marriage.
Yeah. you make some great points, because I didn't think about those. Those are two other really great examples of self-realization. Tao realizes he doesn't need to change himself for her. He overcorrected.
Oh my gosh.
It was so embarrassing. It was brutal.
I was so embarrassed for him.
Yeah.
I was like, don't. Oh God, you're doing it.
Yeah. Taking her to a movie that she knows he hates. Why would you do that? Yeah, I love what he's talking about the movie and how, it's about these two kids and they would never fall in love. It's obviously not going to last. You really picked a bad movie. We're kids trying to go on a date for the first time in our lives, and you're telling me we're not going to last. I don't know if he ever understood that that's what Elle was telling him.
No.
I don't think he did.
And props to her for still loving him enough to go, you big dumb oaf. I love you. You're just, oh my goodness.
But come on. But there's also, I feel like, in that milkshake scene, I think there's a realization for the first time for Darcy, because she's the one that's really pushing on trying to get them together.
Oh no, it was Tara, because Darcy was a little bit extra pushing and Tara was like, whoa. And that's why when they go to the concert, she goes into the she gets a little bit upset about it, because she's like, I didn't want people to
it's Tara that goes to that runs out.
Yeah, Tara.
Yeah. Okay, no, but Darcy's the one who's really pushing them together.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. No, Darcy.
Okay.
I think you had it backward. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Darcy's like really trying to push him together, and she's like, but what do you mean? What do you mean I'm trying to, of course I'm trying to put you two together. And Elle really has to explain, like you said, Elle has to explain to her, I'm not ready for that change. You're not doing something that I consented to. And that kind of, I feel like that clicked something for Darcy a little bit.
I have a totally different takeaway from that, because I don't think Darcy really clicked into it.
Really?
Because I think she looks at Tara as if have my back on this. Keep going. And that's when Tara backs up Elle's statement, and you see this change on her face too. And then pretty much in the next scene for Tara's character, she sits down, she said this thing happened, she's starting to feel very conflicted, and then she runs away. Because she was like, oh yeah, I forgot how ridiculously different things are to be suddenly out. Once I was wallpaper, I was in the crowd, I was just one of everybody, I was just me, and nobody seemed to give 2 cents. But now suddenly everyone's learned, and I've suddenly been outed as extra special, or I'm the hero of the week, or I have this main character energy, or whatever you want to call it. And I feel put on the spot. I feel constantly attention drawn to me, and it makes me really uncomfortable because I'm the same person. Why? What am I supposed to be living up to? And it's not. But I will say, Darcy goes to her as a good girlfriend should. Go to your girlfriends, people, when they're feeling vulnerable and sad and not in need of support. Go and support them. So she goes to her, and she really shows how to support someone who's feeling vulnerable.
She does, yeah,
in such a beautiful way.
She's very good at that.
And especially when we see what ends up happening to Darcy's character that comes out more and more on the end of season 2. It's like, how resilient are you that you can be that
incredibly
supportive
strong while going through so much yourself that no one knows about?
Even Tara.
Internalizing all of it.
Had no idea. Well, I think she had a bit
I
of
really
an
don't think she did.
No? Okay.
Because I think she truly believes, up until Tara goes to Darcy's mom, she truly believes that she doesn't understand it, but she feels like Darcy doesn't love her.
Yeah.
She feels like there's something wrong with the relationship. She can't figure out what it is. She thinks it's her the whole time until that terrible mother. Oh, I hate that mom. She's the worst in that whole show by far.
Okay, so I'm sure lots of fans agree with you and whatnot. I have to admit, whenever I encounter someone who I immediately dislike, or I see giving off really terrible vibes, or making poor life choices or decisions, I always want to try to figure out what it is that is making them act that way. So I have some sympathy for Darcy's mother. Is she? Dale's like, no.
Very little sympathy. I mean, you could change my mind maybe if I learned something.
No, listen, no. Do I have empathy for Darcy's mother? No. Do I have sympathy for her? Yes. There's a big difference, and I think we conflate it too much.
Good point. Yeah, very good point.
Is I can understand someone, even though I don't agree with her, and I don't agree with how she's treating Darcy, and I think it's having the exact opposite effect of what she's intending. It is.
If she's even intending anything,
I don't think she's thinking it through.
Positive. Yeah.
I don't. Well,
she seems like extreme narcissist to me. The only reason I say that is because her daughter was missing all night after an argument, and she does not care. It doesn't seem
to faze her. But
doesn't know where she is.
But remember, we are children of the 70s and 80s, where there was many times that we went off and did all sorts of things, and our parents didn't seem to notice or care. And,
but we had to be, well, no, I don't think so. I mean,
I just think there was a callousness. We had to be back
by the time the street lights went on.
Yes, I think there was a callousness and a neglect attitude.
If I hadn't been back by the time the street lights went on, and it went to midnight,
time to call the police.
Still wasn't. Yeah. There would have been a huge manhunt.
Same. But I think we don't know her backstory. That could have been very normal in how she grew up. Yeah. And she doesn't think anything of it.
Oh, she seems quite posh though, so I don't know.
Although matter.
It still could have been even in a posh household.
Yeah.
You're right.
I'm just playing devil's advocate because Dale and I before this, we had very strong responses, very protective responses as parents toward Darcy. Because I was like, come live with me, Darcy. It's okay. I will take care of you. But in truth, that again is the role of the mediator, is to not necessarily take sides. And to go, okay, what's going on for Darcy's mother that makes her think that a lot of this is okay? Because chances are, if even the police or someone had reported or something had happened, social services could have been involved very easily. And so a mediator isn't always coming in during that kind of moment that we see in Heartstopper.
Right.
It's after the social services have been involved, after the police have been involved. And then it's like, how do you coordinate this parenting? How do you rebuild this very destructive time in their relationship? And that's tough.
Yeah.
Next point.
Yeah.
Okay. Peer mediation improves school climate by building relationships.
And does this kind of go along with the next point after that as well?
Sure. Reduces the alienation, disenfranchisement, and powerlessness that many students feel.
Oh, yeah. I feel like those kind of
go together, really, in many ways. I see that.
Yeah, because the main example I could see for this in Heartstopper was the very beginning of season 1. Before the show, Elle had previously gone to True Home School for Boys, and she has transitioned. She's become. We don't even know what her previous name was. They never say it.
It doesn't even matter. Yeah.
It's irrelevant. But now she's going to, I forgot the name of the school, but the girls' school.
Yep.
She's left.
Let's just call it St. Hagatha's or something like that.
Hagatha?
Yeah.
You had to be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of the hags.
Yeah, which, used to have a positive, it was a good luck. The hag was the positive flip side of the witch, which was the bad luck, which is why they used to put a hag at the front of ships, because it was good luck.
Huh.
Anyway, random thing.
Fun fact. You learn things on this podcast.
But so Al has left. And one of the very first thing they're talking about, we have Tao, Charlie, and Isaac together. And they feel like what they used to have a friend group is now just a trio.
Yes. Oh, and Tao is so mourning that.
He is. He's still buying apple juice for Elle every morning.
And making quite a big deal of it. Like even telling Elle, I am still buying apple juice.
That's so dumb. He's like, I know. I can't help it. But you're kind of seeing where their friend group is breaking down a little bit. But through the course of the show, through these building relationships, right? They start rebuilding that friend group. They bring in Tara and Darcy, then they bring in Nick, then they bring in Imogen, then they bring in Sahar, and their group is and then they bring in James, and their group is getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Team. It's becoming more of a team.
And it's very caring and supportive equally. There is no leader among the group. They're a true
hegemony,
group.
Really. Hierarchy.
Yeah.
Not a hierarchy.
Which then also changes their entire climate of the school as well. It starts to change the climate of the school. Yes. Because then Harry's group of bro, dude, lad friends starts to break up. It has the opposite effect.
Yeah.
Because as soon as Harry shows his homophobia, 3 of the important guys in that group start backing off. They even tell Nick, like, Nick, we're not friends with him anymore.
Yeah.
Like, we understand.
We don't accept it. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't accept that. And eventually that even turns Harry himself around.
It coaches him.
To a certain degree, yeah. So the entire climate of the school starts to change from them building on that friendship group and working on those relationships amongst each other.
Yeah. Stronger together.
Yeah.
There's no other things?
That's the only thing I could come up with. Yeah. Did you think of another?
Well, I mean, there's just so many options that... Even, I mean, you obviously loved the France school trip a lot because you enjoyed that aspect of it. But I was really there.
I just think it's cool whenever Nick tries to speak French. I love it every time because every time he only does it 3 times, and each time he surprises somebody new because nobody had any idea.
You speak French?
Oh yeah. My dad's French. Since when? Since his birth. Like, what do you want?
Just even the sibling relationships. Because Charlie's sister, I mean, we didn't have a chance to talk about
Tori.
Nick's older brother and how but he wasn't even a part of the school, really. So that's not really a peer-on-peer mentoring. But there is an opportunity there because Tori comes and confronts David and is like, what you're doing is unacceptable.
Yeah.
I love that showdown so much. And
how she did it too. She kicks a cell phone out of his hand. If you speak about my brother one last time, I will end you. And she's this little tiny girl.
I mean, he's so quite perfect. Large.
He's like, I had to look him up. He's like 6'5" or something.
He's a beast.
Yeah, there was an interview with him standing next to, I think it was Mr. Farouk, who doesn't seem particularly diminutive to me. He seems like a pretty big towered over Mr. Farouk. It's like, how tall is that man? And then I realized, because he always was very much taller than Nick too as well. Nick is he's 6'2" himself.
Oh yeah.
And then it dawned up, I was like, oh yeah, he's not me. He's not little 5'6". He's a big guy.
Right.
Yeah.
And also the teachers and in their interactions, they're calm. Well, we also already talked about how there's a teacher that wasn't supportive, but the 3 that we see coming into these youth's lives and showing, leading by example, patterning critical thinking opportunities, showing their support, giving them that option to make choices and to come back into the fold because he could have let Charlie just stay in that art classroom forever.
Yeah.
I mean, he was giving him the space, but at one point he's like, he said, you can't do this.
Yeah, he does. That's right. That was a beautiful, I think it's the last episode of season 1.
Yeah. He doesn't kick him out.
He's like, you can stay here if you want to. But, when I was your age, I used to do the same thing. And I would hide from everyone else. And guess what? That wasn't any better.
No. It wasn't helping. It ultimately wasn't serving him in the end.
Yeah. Hiding is not going to help you.
Yeah. And there's, when Elle's going through that exploration of the art college and whatnot, she was going through so much. And especially with Tao, right? Of like making these decisions. So there's yet another thing that she has to go through, another thing that she has to think about. And how they end up supporting her and how they end up showing up for her.
Yes.
It's a huge decision. And there were some great people who she was connecting with there. But bridging that is really difficult.
Extremely.
And I think it speaks to the ability of however the school environment has created an area where these youths can come out and say, whatever you're doing is good. We're going to try to support you. We're showing up. Because disenfranchisement can take on very different faces and show up in very different ways. And it can even be as subtle as you applying for this school, whatever. Set your sights lower, Elle. And that could have, because she was feeling so vulnerable and so uncertain, that could have finished her. It could have. It could have had a very disastrous outcome, but
could have changed her entire future.
Nobody did that to her, which was beautiful. And you could see someone making a bad choice in your life, but you have to take a moment to examine, is it a bad choice for them or is it a bad choice for you?
Yeah. Because to be fair, things like that were said to Tao.
Oh yeah.
But they were honest criticism. Is that supposed to be a potato? No, it's a shoe, actually.
But she helped him too.
She did. She did help him as well.
She, instead of saying, just throw this away, this is total garbage.
Mm-hmm. That's true. She did the opposite as well with when they were back at Truman. I mean, and he showed her what was supposed to be a landscape.
I know.
And she goes, well, it's really not that bad. It's just I don't think there's supposed to be people in landscapes.
So sweet, so
but she
kind.
was really sweet and kind about it.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, if you say there's a movie coming out, can it be about Tao and Elle?
That would be good too.
Relationship so much. All right, last one. Builds a strong sense of cooperation within the school community in order to address disputes that interfere with learning. Mm-hmm. The school sports in the beginning of season 2 is a perfect opportunity. The coach coming out, Tao, you're signing. You tried to get away. You thought you'd be sneaky.
Tao, no. No, Tao.
But then Charlie stands up and said, I'm going to run for you because you can't. Because Elle's like, but he can't run, miss. He
really?
He can't?
Well, not well. And he really can't. He's the slowest kid on the planet. How? He's a foot taller than anybody else.
No. And then Nick. That was pretty steamy and romantic when he's finishing and he does and he looks and he sees Charlie.
You need to finish that sentence. And when he's finishing.
Oh, sorry. In rugby, when he's playing the rugby match.
Yes, thank you. Sorry. Okay. Give some context there. That was steamy romantic when he's finishing. Oh, God. It's a wholesome show.
It is a wholesome show. He looks and he sees Charlie in the throng in the crowd and he's like, you know what? I'm just going to go over and hang out with him. It's just what I want to do right now.
And that little bit, we've talked about this a lot, but going back to how brilliantly the show was produced, mm-hmm. how they incorporated the graphic novel aspect into the show, mm-hmm. because there's these little like leaves and they flutter around Charlie's head and then they go across the pitch and flutter around Nick's head, showing how they're connected to each other. So beautiful.
Little hearts, little electricity, little shocks. Yeah. Beautiful. And so, let's do a quick shout out to Stephen Fry, who is, I guess, the principal. I mean, I guess he's headmaster, kind of headmaster. I guess he's kind of checked out because we never see him in person.
We never see him once, but the way he does a couple of announcements.
Yes.
Over the, and you recognize it. I recognize his voice immediately. But he also sounds like he would be the fourth supportive member of the faculty.
Oh yeah, he says very supportive things.
Yeah,
he's not like
nothing direct, but
you must march in the hallways.
He sounds very fun and Mm-hmm. Well, and he had to have been instrumental in helping Elle move from Truham to Higgs.
There we go.
That's it. That's the name of the girls' school. Higgs.
Not Hagatha.
You even had an H, and I still didn't pick up on it. Yeah, Higgs School. Yeah, there were a couple other things with the what was it? The school community. Well, and maybe this is more of a friendship thing than a school community. But you mentioned one of them, how they all showed up for Elle's art showing, and there was another example when Sahar and Tara are trying to do prom and some kids show up but they're just useless. Nothing's happening. No, it's not going well. And Tara sends one text. Tara sends one text to her little friend group and they all show up.
Yes.
And they help and they get it done and it's a brilliant, beautiful prom.
Yes. Because it could have not been.
It could have been a disaster. It was headed toward disaster for sure. Could you imagine how humiliating that would have been for Sahar especially, because she was the one that was asked to organize the whole thing.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, where were the faculty helping?
They don't necessarily have to be. It's usually a student-run organization and events and whatnot. And it's sort of expected. It's a lot to ask of teachers. It's amazing about what is expected of teachers all the time. And then we say, and then why aren't you doing 10 other things? Like, okay, well, I'll just have 10 more arms.
Yeah, that's true. Especially, I suppose, even more so in England, where proms are not part of the general culture.
No, not really.
That's a new thing for them.
Yes.
And it's always an extra separate thing. So, yeah,
it was probably something demanded by the students, created by the students, pushed by the students. And so some of that support is also, okay, well, we will let you run it. We will let you contain it. We will actually allow you to be accountable for it too, as opposed to the teachers kind of swooping in and helicoptering over them.
Which is a great lesson to teach. Mm-hmm. You know, taking on that responsibility of a project that size, project planning and execution, that's difficult.
I mean, to me, I'm like, meh, it's just a dance. Throw on some music, that's it. But
but they did a great job.
Yes, it was beautiful. All right. So, I mean, if you are not a Heartstopper fan, you hopefully got a little bit out of our discussion about mediation and peer-to-peer mediation in schools, especially with certain rough issues and helping children and youth cultivate tools. I will, again, put that guide in the show notes so you can have access to it. If you want to tell us some stories about times that you were navigating conflict as you were growing up, feel free to write us at toughcallmediation@gmail.com. Fans of Heartstopper, by all means, give us a shout out. I mean, if you disagree with us, I'll just have you disagree with Dale. Just send all of your disagreements to Dale.
That's fair. As Nick said when he gave Charlie a hickey and was accused of it. That's fair.
All right. Well, thank you for listening. We really appreciate you taking time to put on our podcast, and we hope to see you next week. Don't forget to like, rate, and subscribe. Bye for now.
Bye-bye. This podcast brought to you by Blush Productions. Our senior producer and editor is Tyree Lawton. Tech advisor is Ken Ayler. Media by Hope Ersick. Original music by Tyree Lawton. Email your questions to toughcallmediation@gmail.com. Like, rate, and subscribe. Follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. Check out aylerservices.com for more information.